Hey guys, welcome you flyers, riders, and riders. Thank you for joining me. I'm recording this on Mother's Day, so I wanted to take a second and say thank you. Those mothers out there sacrifice a lot. They keep working for us. They only want to see us exceed, grow, and be happy. I know that my mother's done a lot, and there's plenty that I don't even know. So, love you, Mom. Thanks for allowing me to work on my projects and get me the things that I always needed growing up. Love you. With that being said, let's get into the show. Chapter 9 The Wishing Fountain. Last week we left off with David entering the gardens and having a conversation with Greenfinger's George. As George is walking away, we now enter the new chapter, and David waits for him to be out of sight until he continues his search for the beech trees. He's walking for a couple minutes before he sees a huge bank of big oaks, grabs a couple acorns, starts thinking about what Conker would eat if there was acorns, if he couldn't be climbing. He's wondering if it's bird seed feeder. He's wondering if it's nuts from Mr. Bacon's house. He's just wondering about what this squirrel is eating. He walks for about 10 minutes and he comes up to a fountain. He notices it's a wishing fountain with all the coins scattered across the bottom blue tile. He searches in his pocket for a penny, and when he throws it in, he finds himself making a wish to somehow help Conker. When David looks up, he hears a faint rustling sound in front of him. He stares and sees a smiling squirrel. He tells him, "I've been warned about you. You're the sandwich robber." And he decides to share an apple. He takes a bite real quick, puts it down on the wall. He watches the squirrel grab it, take a bite, and just spit it back into the fountain. Apparently he's not a big fan of those. Might prefer some Granny Smiths. After a couple seconds of interacting with the squirrel, the smiling squirrel leans over and bolts off, sensing danger. David can't see anything, but then quickly a bigger squirrel that the author describes as big as a baseball with a light feather boa as a tail comes chasing the other one away. David watches this interaction and yells, "Leave him alone!" And to me, not sure why, but that made me think of the scene from Prince of Egypt when he's running at the guy with the whip. "Leave that man alone!" Terrible, terrible scene, but that's what it made me think of. He's watching this happen, and he's wondering if Conker could have gotten away because of his eye being hurt. He wouldn't have good peripheral vision, and he's starting to wonder if squirrels could even climb. It would be difficult if he's running around in circles just in the garden on the ground. How could he climb in a straight line, period? As David watches that interaction between the first two squirrels, not having any peripheral vision would make it hard to climb. It became clear what the squirrel Conker back home was once he heard a quack and he looked over to see mallards just chilling in the pond. And he says that Conker is essentially, in effect, a sitting duck. So we can see that David got his little study done on squirrels, maybe not quite as much as you would hope, but he's seeming to get some helpful information. The information that David is getting might be able to help him find or capture Conker in some way. Maybe he'll be able to use some kind of bait, or he'll find some habitat for him, just some way to locate Conker, and then go from there. Alright, now we're going to get into Chapter 10, Inspiration. And this was kind of a fun one as well. This one, you start getting more of the seeds planted, a lot of lore going in. So, yeah, enjoy. As David gets home, he goes to open the gate, and instead of the normal creak that he hears a loud whining sound. He thinks something's broken. When he goes to check it, he hears it again, but that sounds more like the neighbor's yard this time. So he peeks over to see what's going on, And out of curiosity, but more fueled by suspicion, David goes to check on what Mr. Bacon is doing. He looks inside of his garage and finds Mr. Bacon doing some form of woodworking. And although nothing incriminating has happened yet, David gets a weird, suspicious feeling in his stomach. So he sneaks back over to his house, walks into the house where Liz is making dinner and talking to Lucy. Lucy's sitting at the table, working on a dragon with her two other dragons sitting there watching her. They start to have a conversation, and Lucy gets all excited because David was supposed to bring her a storybook about squirrels. She gets a little bit upset when David explains that he wasn't able to, and that he says thanks for giving the warning about bacon at the library. And they continue to have this conversation about what had happened at the library. David told Lucy about the two squirrels, one of the bigger ones that's chasing him around, and Lucy gets even more excited, asking if she thinks that was Ringtail, because Ringtail was the large one from here, and she gets even more hyped up and turns over to her mom. Says, Mom, they went over to the gardens. And David doesn't think that's possible because it's a long trek. They must have caught the bus. Lucy laughs at the joke but says they could have gone through the gardens and points out the window. Lucy continues to work on the dragon in front of her. David notes the first two that are completed watching her. The first one looks just as if Lucy had dissolved into it, a little bit regal, but definitely inspired by Lucy. The second dragon was fierce and ready for battle. It had spikes and teeth ready to go, looking like it's going to blow flames at the next second. The first one was hers, named Gwendolyn. The second was Gwaine. Liz asked for David's opinion on the two dragons that Lucy had made first. David gives his observations, saying that Gwendolyn looks just like Lucy, and Gwaine was a little scary, something that he didn't want to meet in the dark alley. Both Lucy and Liz get very quiet, and David fears that he said something wrong. Liz and Lucy both look at each other in a silent exchange but decide to say nothing. David asks who Gwaine is, and Liz sends Lucy away before she could answer. Liz starts doing house chores, taking out the trash, feeding the cat, other small things here and there. So while she's out, David bumps Lucy and asks, who is that dragon? The second, scarier dragon. Lucy looks at him and tells him that's the last dragon. David says, yeah, but who is he modeled after? Lucy just looks at him as if it should be obvious and he should know that it's the last real dragon on Earth, she says. As they start getting ready for dinner, Lucy tells David that they need to find a name for the new squirrel. David explains how this squirrel has a very big smile. Lucy listens for a second and says, Smiler? David and Liz agree that that's not the name. Lucy says, okay, well that's Gwaine's first turn. Then Lucy turns again, listens, and says, what about Big Beam? Liz laughs and says, could you imagine being stuck with a name called Big Beam? Lucy gets a little bit upset and says, well, that's Gwendolyn's turn. You can see an idea pop in her head as a spark goes into her eye and says, can Gadzooks try? David thinks it's a little funny, but after a few minutes of talking, Lucy convinces David to give it a shot and begs her mom to teach David how to do it. Liz explains that he needs to do a sort of dragon dream. She says to picture Gadzooks in his mind eye, and David starts to describe what he's seen, Gadzooks on a windowsill peering out in thought, and Liz corrects him, says no. He's deep in thought, chewing on his pencil, thinking of a name for this squirrel. Picture it, David. Dream it. After a few seconds in David's mind, he can see exactly that. Then a page flips on the dragon's pad, and he can see the dragon writing down. The name that comes up when he turns it over for him is Snigger. David whispers out the name to Liz and Lucy, and he can feel a hurrying sound around the entire house. Then David whispers, yes, his name is Snigger. Which I think is the perfect name. I had to look it up to see exactly what it said. But Snigger is basically meaning that you are laughing in a spiteful or mocking way at someone. So this squirrel has devious plans for all. He's stealing the Mr. George Greenfinger's sandwich all the time, playing jokes, just running away. That's a pretty good, suitable name. We're definitely starting to see more and more glimpse of Liz becoming Chiron the Centaur Mentor and still blocking the plot. We can tell that there's something special going on about these dragons, especially with Guinevere being just like Liz and now Gwendolyn being just like Lucy. There's something to these dragons a little bit more than just personalized. Hopefully, we'll get some more answers in the coming chapters, but Gadzooks, David, and Lucy are all starting this journey on how to help conquer. And now we have a new character in the mix, Snigger. I'm waiting to hear more on the latest, or not the latest. I'm waiting to hear more on the second dragon, Gwaine, what Lucy meant by the last real dragon in the world. Obviously, these real dragons that we've been dealing with so far are little clay ones that aren't very big. So, it gets me excited if we're going to meet some real ones in this. Alright, on to the next chapter. 11. Something Trappy. Shortly after David had named the squirrel, there was a knock on the door. Liz goes to check on it and returns shortly. She explains that Henry Bacon was there asking for some smelly cheese that he could borrow. David gets a suspicious feeling and goes to check to see what he's doing because he smells a trap. Lucy follows him out there and they stop outside of Mr. Henry Bacon's house in front of his garage doors. It's dark and they can't really see much. But then they hear some rustling outside and the doors explode open. Mr. Bacon comes out ready with a golf club in his hands just to swing on anybody. Once he sees that it's Lucy and David, he calms down, brings the club down, but he's still irritated. What do you guys want? What are you doing here? And David just says that he heard that he's making a trap and they wanted to see. Mr. Bacon gets kind of excited and says, well, come on, boy, come check it out. David tells Lucy to stay outside of the garage and just wait for him. She reluctantly stands there, and as he's checking it out, he can see that this trap is big enough to catch at least 12 rats. And the door comes down with a spiteful snap when the trap is set off. Henry Bacon is showing David how to pull this string. It's feather-like trigger, so anything can go in there. His goal is to catch whatever is getting in his garden and stop it. After David saw how dangerous this trap could be, he tells Mr. Bacon to stop. Lucy starts to explode and say that he can't use this trap because it might hurt, and before Dave could get out who it was, David says, a cat's name, Conquer. Conquer the cat that lives up for about 4 houses. Mr. Bacon goes on to say that there are no other cats on this block other than the Penny Kettle's mangy thing. That makes Lucy even more upset. David and Lucy start to head back, and Lucy's just screaming the whole way. She's pretty upset that David didn't stand up for her or the squirrel, saying that he just doesn't care. She starts screaming, and Liz comes in to check on them and make sure that everything's okay. Lucy yet again yells, saying that David does not care about Conquer, and runs up to her room. Liz goes after her, and David just feels so guilty. After a while, Liz comes down to find the kitchen cleaned up, the dishes are done, food is put away, there's 2 meals still put into the oven on a low temperature to be kept warm, with a note from David that reads, gone for a walk, took bottles to their recycling bin. Bonington threw up a hairball. I cleaned it up. Hope Lucy's okay. It's my fault. Sorry. Won't happen again. Signed, David. It was pretty late by the time David returned, and he was kind of hesitant when he walked through the door. Liz was waiting there, and she exclaims for him to calm down and take his jacket off. If she wanted him out, his teddy would have been torn up and on the doorstep. David takes a deep breath and starts to relax a little bit. And that's the end of the chapter. So we can see here that Lucy is very passionate about the squirrels. She's wanting to save them and make sure that nothing happens to endanger them. The trap that Bacon is working on doesn't seem like it's very lethal. It says that it comes down in a, snapping sound, quick and hard, but it doesn't say that it's designed to kill. It says that it's big. It's able to, hold up to 12. So it might get the job done. Not sure if I mentioned it or not, but in the chapter, Liz doesn't agree to give him any cheese or any kind of bait whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter. However, with how determined Mr. Bacon is himself, I'm sure that he'll find a way to get some kind of bait. So it's just a matter of time on if he's going to catch conquer or catch something. I'm sure there's other wildlife out there other than just squirrels. So I'm excited to see where this goes and how David might be able to help out. All right, chapter 12, In the Attic. David and Lucy had made up the night before when David brought her hot cocoa and agreed to help her try to catch Conquer first. So, as they were waiting the next day for Liz to pack up her stuff and leave to the fair, they got into the attic once she left and found an old rabbit's hutch. When David was checking it out, he found a little hole in the wall where there was a nest of something. It was too big and too round to be a bird's nest, so he figured it must be a small rodent, possibly a squirrel. But he can tell with the signs that it had been abandoned for a while, and nothing has lived there for at least a couple weeks. When David was peering through the hole in the wall, he gets spooked, he jumps, and then falls in the attic. Lucy starts exclaiming, "Are you okay? What's going on?" David just has to laugh, say, "It's okay, I got spooked. I was looking out the hole and a bird popped in, and all I saw was its eye." A nice little jump scare, it's a little sketchy. Don't know what's going on there. But as they're rummaging through this, David says that he hears some fluttering going on, like maybe a bird or something inside the house, coming from the dragon's den. Once they get in there, Lucy opens the door, and there's nothing suspicious going on. David jokes about it being a dragon, and Lucy is silent. She doesn't react to David whatsoever. She just looks from wall to wall and then notices that the dragon Gruffin is no longer in his place. He's MIA. She just looks around and says, "Typical." That's the end of that one. So, not a crazy chapter, but we got a little bit more with the dragons. We can clearly see that they're at least moving around, so we haven't caught them in the act. It's starting to feel a little Toy Story-ish, like how the toys come alive only when the kids aren't around. Which would suck, man. I would want to interact with my dragon. I think it'd be cool to have your own little guy on your shoulder, blowing some fire, making some stuff for you. Use him as a lighter. Here you go, bro. Let's light it. Chapter 13, To Catch a Squirrel. This one's pretty short. We just see David and Lucy start to plan for their own little trap. It's very similar to Bacon's, but not quite as sophisticated. They have a little string that they're going to attach to a sliding plywood door. When it gets pulled, it's just going to drop and then catch whatever's inside in there. David tells Lucy to go grab some acorns from his jacket that he brought from the library, and he explains that he feels a little guilty and silly for stealing them from the library. They tie it onto the string and place it behind a little rock garden, and then they place a little trail of acorns from the fence all the way to it. Once they get it all set up, Lucy asks how long it'll take, and David tells her it's going to be a little bit. We have to have patience, and it's now up to Conquer. Chapter 14, Gotcha. Throughout the day, Lucy is just anxious. She keeps checking the trap, says about at least a dozen times before her mother came home. About 8 o'clock, Liz starts getting ready and sending Lucy to bed. Once Lucy's out of earshot, her and David start talking about next week and how it's Lucy's birthday. Liz asks David if she thinks the gift that she got her is too much and shows her a nice camera. David starts spinning around, checking it out. They hear a little snapping sound. Liz says, "Don't waste film, David." David swears that he didn't touch a button, then gets quiet. He said, "You said a snapping sound? Not a sliding or a clank?" He gets pretty upset and wants to go check on the trap in Mr. Bacon's yard. He goes and knocks on the door. Bacon's a little irked to see him, starting to get just annoyed with David, period, it seems like. David says, "Hey, your trap, I think it went off." Bacon just tells him in a hurried voice, "Back gate." And they go over, meet, open up the gate, and go check on the trap. Mr. Bacon had ended up catching a hedgehog. Once David saw that it was not Conquer, he was able to relax and breathe a little bit. He convinces Bacon to put the trap up a little bit higher because small things like hedgehogs could continue to set it off, versus things like rats or squirrels are able to climb. So he can maybe leave a rope bridge up to it and then still trap the smarter ones that way. Bacon agrees and decides to do that tomorrow, and as David is leaving, he gets a weird feeling. He hears something fall, turns around, and in a small little junk pile with a watering can, a hose, and a couple of other things, he gets a weird sinking feeling in his stomach. He goes to turn around, and as he touches the gate, Gadzooks, his own dragon, flashes into his mind, and he starts puffing smoke rings as if trying to communicate and communicate. And then in a low, gruffy voice, you can just hear, "Hiding place. Low to the ground." And then Gadzooks disappeared out of his mind as fast as he came. David could only describe this as having a dragon dream, and there was something different about it. It felt something magical. When David gets home, he is starting to ponder this once he got the vision of Gadzooks, and he asked Liz why she talks as if the dragon's real. And Liz nonchalantly, casually just says they are real. To me and Lucy. Then David asks about hurrying from the den. Liz doesn't say anything and says that it's just central heating. David sees no radiators or anything, but Liz is already gone for the night. That's the end of the chapter. So Liz is starting to ease up a little bit. We can tell that she wants to tell David and let him in just slowly by slowly. And it's nice to see that she's trusting him more and more now that David is starting to believe. And I think these visions are only going to get more frequent as he decides to, I don't, what would you say, bond with this clay dragon. I'm a collector myself, so I understand having some bond with inanimate objects, but I'm not sure how this would go. Be cool to have something that helps you with your content creation, though. Gadzook sounds like a baller. I would need some good help. But thank you for joining, and we'll be back next week with a couple more chapters. And that brings us to the end of the section. As always, if you guys have any suggestions, comments, questions, anything along those lines, please email me at gadzooks@gmail.com. Put it in the description down below. I want to give a couple more shout outs. I'm not going to use last names, but these people know who they are. Thank you to Kaylee, thank you to Joel, and thank you to Ashlyn. I'm going to be working with those guys to bring their creative side to this podcast as well, and I can't wait to share what they have to offer. I'll be putting their links with their work down below once we get them implemented. So, yeah, thank you guys for helping me grow. Have a safe flight back and hit no turbulence.